So I want to take a moment here to talk about something that was brought up by somebody in an earlier chat. I know it's kind of hard um, to quantify, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about anime that involves, for lack of a term, mental weirdness. People who are unreliable narrators, characters who may be going through things and how that's affecting their view of events. Perfect Blue, I think, is the poster child for this.
I was just thinking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, characters going through
Paprika. Paprika. There's, anything by
Lane.
Satoshi Kon,
Yeah, pretty much.
pretty much.
hmm
I hate to throw Lane in there. Sorry, Brent.
No, I think that's absolutely valid.
Yeah.
There's an argument that Lane is. Do I say this? Yeah. There's an argument that Lane is dying throughout the entire anime series. Okay, so, all right, we're gonna go there. I was lucky enough to attend a panel at Otakon where some of the staff of Lane were there, and somebody stood up and said, "So, in the first episode, Lane looks down at her fingers, and smoke comes out of her fingers." And that is apparently a common thing that people self-report when they're dying and they have a dream and they're like brought back. That is a common thing that they say they saw in their dream when they were kind of going through that death dream. And so they said, is Lane dying throughout the entire anime series, and that's why it's so... And this is all just kind of her mind trying to pull everything together. And the creators said,
Ooh.
if you believe that as an interpretation, go for it.
Wow.
That is a valid interpretation of the entire show. But there are other, interpretations. That's not the interpretation.
Right.
But yeah. So there's a lot of... This is an interesting thing that pops up fairly often in anime. Characters having mental issues. Akira, right?
Yep.
Tetsuo definitely is not all right in the head. The kids are not all right.
Well, for more recently, would you consider Goblin Slayer?
I've only seen
His
episode
obsession
1,
with-
so...
Well, just from what you've seen in episode 1, where he's blindly, obsessively after goblins because of a horrible childhood traumatic experience that mentally nothing else matters but goblins. It's not, any of the end of the world. It's not any kind of other monster. It's goblins. Just goblins. I have no mental capacity to deal with anything but goblins and killing them. So it's like, it's kind of a mental weirdness, and I think everybody that interacts with him is also kind of like, hey, there's, other things going on. He's like, does it involve goblins? And they're like, okay. Okay, we got your little off map here. We're doing other things. Like,
Yeah, I think Paranoid Agent absolutely counts, Jay. That's again classic one. Welcome to the NHK, I think, is also very much about that, pretty explicitly. Right, that is the central theme of that show. Whereas like Paprika, it's more I forget her name, but the main character herself is pretty well put together. She's just dealing with other people who have problems in their lives.
Who are nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And to be pointed out, obviously there are, insane villains in shonen series. We put that to the side. But yeah, I think that is kind of interesting. Berserk.
Shinji.
Yeah. Evangelion. There we go.
Shinji.
Uh-huh.
There's a little tad of mental weirdness. Let's all clap for him.
Asuka. Yeah. Definitely. Mr. Ikari, also, I think Gendo has one or two issues to work through himself.
Just a handful.
He'll be fine.
Could you say things like Orika 7 or, Amuro Red? You know what I mean? Is there mental weirdness in that, or is that just sort of reactions to things around you and you're just coping with it? You're not just weird mentally by yourself.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Gundam in general definitely does deal with how war kind of drives you mad. or
Right.
just affects you in strong ways. So I think you can certainly go there. As I said before, I think Amuro is probably on the spectrum. So you can kind of filter that in as well. Not to say weirdness, but trying to portray a different mental perspective.
Right.
So yeah, there's certainly that. But I don't know. That's an interesting point. One of the fascinating things also about Gundam is the characters often present as logical and reasonable, but then their actions are often extreme. Char Aznable being a great example of somebody who is, fine doing his thing, and then all of a sudden, kills a guy. And there's a reason for that, but, a very strong thing.
Now, Fixus brought up Aku no Hana. That's Flowers of Evil, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's what that is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's some mental weirdness going there.
Yeah, there is. Oh, there's a whole lot going on there.
Oh.
Don't want to touch that with a 10-foot clown pole. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating, too, because you get a fair amount of... this shows up, I would say, more in anime than I'm used to seeing it in other media, right? You don't see a lot of Westerns with this kind of thing in it. You don't see a lot of, rom-coms with this kind of thing in it. Musicals. I mean, Cats is kind of weird. But anyway...
Just got Higurashi the musical.
Yeah.
I want to see that now. But yeah, it's weird.
Stab.
Yeah, exactly.
Stab.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. Boogie Pop Phantom obviously comes to mind as well.
Yeah.
One of the classics. And why do you think anime does do it so often? Like what is it about anime that makes it fertile ground for this, do you think?
Well, I mean, obviously it's an interesting driving plot point. But you can really get a story going if you've got somebody who's got like a crazy twitch going on, that you can tell your broader story, and then in that you can layer in some Future Diary the musical. Holy cow! Mirai Nikki the musical. Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's wow. $1 million idea or a psycho work for all of us. But I think if you're going to layer in stories that, and sort of not have a full-on arc by itself, but just sort of layer in the stories, it's really easy to work with mental weirdness, because then you can say, the hero goes and does this. And then you can say, but the hero's motivated because of this. They, somebody strangled their pet puppy when they were like 5. That would be, a mental weirdness that's interesting to explore as a subtext to the general storyline.
Oh,
so I think it provides depth.
Code Geass, definitely is one of those. Yep, absolutely.
Going to destroy Britannia.
I just think the medium, I think just the medium itself, like just the animation, whether it's the cell or CGI or whatever, it provides you with a visual of bringing that madness or that very specific OCD thing in closer, and it can make, and you can hide it like sotto voce in opera and on theater, where it's a loud whisper to tell the crowd this is what's going on. Characters on stage don't know, but that's obvious. Now in animation, it's a look. It's a like how many times have we seen a character literally go insane in the middle of a room full of people and nobody notices, but you see the the crazy look that goes on their face and then just disappears. You can get away with that. Now I'm thinking of I'm watching currently the television series Fargo.
Yep.
And there's a lot of mental weirdness in there. There's a lot of mental weirdness going on. And it's harder to pull out because there's multiple things you have to do to bring it out. You cannot just rely on the visual. You cannot rely on the audio. You cannot rely just we all have a concert, and that's a little bit harder to do, especially when you're dealing with a purposely make that medium do what you want it. You have to go through a number of whatevers to get it right. And even then, someone else in the background I might go walk in with the cell phone.
Yeah, I think we're losing Steve here a little bit. But yeah, and I'm totally with you there. And I think it also ties into the fact that animation has an abstraction to it. Well, like Scott McCloud talks about, where because the characters aren't real, you can project yourself more onto them,
Right.
And you can do more with it. You can be more over the top. You can be more constrained, however you want to be. Where with live action or whatever, like you that's their face. Like you can't just suddenly make their face do something else outside of CGI and such.
Well, all the stuff that we talk about, like, tropey kind of things and visual cues that have developed that give you extra personality elements to a person, so that, if you're looking at some live actor and they're having this internal conflict, you really have to, understand the entirety of the context and then watch their body language, watch their facial features, and then sort of intuit from that what mentally is going on if you don't have the sort of omnipresent narrator telling you what's going on. Versus anime, you can project that mental weirdness, and I'm thinking of, it's not Lane, it was some other, but somebody learned some shocking news, and all of a sudden you have a camera angle that literally is like cutting slightly through their forehead to their nose, and their facial effect, their pupils are huge, their eyes are huge, and it's like almost like a flat effect on their face. And you can see the tension in the way it's drawn, and you can feel the sort of snap moment.
Yeah.
Just the angle of the camera is impossible to do live action, and the facial construct to telegraph what's going on is with all of those shortcut pieces, so that you instantly know, oh crap, this person has just gone, and now we get to see what's going to happen.
I think of Evangelion when the arm breaks, and we see that sort of just black and white image of Shinji and his eyes, and it's very abstract, but he's out of it, he's gone.
And that's in anime. I mean, it's much easier to coordinate that mental weirdness and that moment of what's going on internally than it is trying to do that with a live action.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And Jay, I think Death Note is absolutely a candidate here. Those characters are messed up, definitely.
Yeah.
I keep going back to Gundam because I think it is so interesting how, that is a franchise where where you have kind of big characters,
right,
and sometimes they are driven to extreme behaviors, but it's not so much. Well, I guess it's because of trauma and things like that. I'm thinking like Gundam Wing, which is very over the top. But
how about Ray Zero? Zero? You know what I mean? If you think about Subaru, I think that's where I'm thinking that camera angle, where there's so many things going on. He's done so much to try and correct the path that he's going on, and each successive failure after having tried to plan to not fail leads to that kind of like snap moment where he's got to dial back in from just being like, this is a level of insanity I can't do.
Gotcha.
So, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. Like there's altered mental stress. You keep dying, and then you keep having to do it again. And it's just like, oh, yeah, I'd go pretty bonkers after a while on that, too.
Yeah. You even have it in Trigun. I think you see it in... as light and fun as that show can be, you definitely see it in Vash here and there. You definitely see it in Knives. You see it in a lot of those characters. You see it in Wolfwood, where all of this weight that he carries on his shoulders. And yeah, I think mecha anime is kind of that is kind of a staple of mecha anime is the character who's kind of mentally off, who just isn't seeing the world in the proper way. Then even further filtered through the main character who is often just kind of thrown into war despite being 12 or whatever, as mecha anime tends to do to people. Which I would argue probably goes back to like Zambot 3. I would say Zambot 3 is one of the first ones to really dive into that to make its child protagonists go through
Kid
hell.
warriors, yeah.
Like, jeez. Not gonna forget that ending very much. It's fascinating because you go back, even Astro Boy. I think you look at Dr. Tenma. Dr. Tenma is a very psychologically messed up character. His son. I mean, okay, it's over half a century old. I think I can talk about it. His son dies in a tragic accident, and so he decides to create a robot version of his son to replace him. That's not creepy.
Yeah, that's not weird at all.
No, that's not strange. And so he, does that, and then because Astro is not an exact replica of his son, he rejects him and sells him to the circus. And then goes off and goes in his own direction, has his own storyline. I think it's great. Which, by the way,
therapy though.
No kidding. If you ever found that odd, the 2003 Astro Boy anime series really dives into Tenma's psychology and really makes that plotline kind of the bookend, if you will, of the anime series, and does a great job, providing that as kind of the core, I guess, sort of emotional journey plotline of that anime series. I love that ending. That is probably my favorite ending of any Tezuka Astro thing. Like, they did an amazing job there.
Okay.
But no spoilers. But yeah, it's a plot line, to be clear. It's a plot line that like Tezuka never resolved. It was always this background thing that was kind of going on in Astro Boy. So the fact that the 2003 anime series actually makes it a beginning, middle, and end kind of a plot line was a satisfying thing for fans. Anyway. I have not seen Doreku, I don't think. Actually, Dororo comes to mind as well. That is kind of one of the big things in Dororo, which is the anime series about the young man who all of his
heart,
limbs,
soul.
soul demons and so forth, and he's trying to get them back,
Yep.
And trying to kind of forgive. That's a rough one.
I forgive you, Daddy, for selling all my parts off to get power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
and also you get the horror manga or the horror stories, MBD Psycho, where the villain is a psycho.
the villain is a well-adjusted and perfectly normal social participant.
Exactly. Yes. Actually, on Laser Eyes, that's a good point. You have the Rei XP, the weirdly emotionless character.
Yeah.
In anime, that's certainly true. And Rei's always kind of the weird one because there are clear reasons for that. Not really having so much to do with trauma per se. But then you have other characters who we clearly had weird things. Higurashi being the classic example of characters who are behaving differently than they should. But yeah, that is certainly a trope. The weirdly emotionless characters who just kind of float through life.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly, these are all things you see a lot in anime, and I find it fascinating that they're there.
Yeah. Well, it makes for good story.
Yeah.
We all like good story.
For you guys, what were some of the those anime with mentally oddball characters that kind of leapt out at you early in your anime career when you were like, oh, let's get into this this weird Japanese cartoon, what the hell, that those shows you're like, Japan's screwed up, you know.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You know,
Because for me, it was definitely Lane. That was
This is-
one of the first.
So
I was gonna say, I can't think of too many ones that were too like freaky weird. I mean, there was just like the Robotech Macross stuff.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It was just the wearing on you of war. It wasn't that necessarily anybody except for Galeron. You know, the one guy from Robotech who was like the sub commander below Bretai,
Okay.
who decided to ram the SDF-1 in like the final episode because he's like, you know, screw this. I don't want to, you know, live in peace with these, you know, people. I just want to like live in the glory of war. So I'm going to ram my ship at full speed and that blow everybody up. Like, that's when I realized that, you know, you had the wacky, insane, evil person, but it wasn't, you know what I mean? It was kind of like, okay, I could grasp why you were doing it. It wasn't like completely out of character, you know, like,
So most of my anime watching was kind of like along those lines, where it just wasn't any. I didn't watch really a whole lot of horror anime up until a certain point, and then I think that the first weird anime would have been Akira. Just because it was different. And you know, so different than what I was watching, but I didn't really identify any character as being mentally weird. I mean, you knew that the kids who were numbered kids were odd because of that way, and you knew that you know, Kaneda was just a thing bad anyway. And you know that, you know, conceptually it was weird. It probably, gosh, it was a while before I saw something that just kind of made me go, and I can't even process what that was. I mean, the things that come up to me that go, oh man, that's messed up, is like Hellsing or Higurashi or you know, stuff like that. But I've never come across, up until
Vampire
Evangelion,
Hunter
I never came across a character that was, or you know, a clone of whatever. So really, when it was the set Yoshikon, that's really what this is weird. Now, in terms of conceptually weird stuff, there's been a lot of stuff over time that I've seen, but not character.
Yeah. Come to that, I think Ghost in the Shell too was one of the first for me, where you know the characters definitely. I mean, they're not mentally ill in it, you know, really, but you know, Michi Kusanagi is clearly going through some stuff. You know, she's trying to kind of process who she is and what's going on. And there's definitely some psychology going on there. I was like, oh, this is, you know, this is a little deeper than I'm used to these sorts of stories going.
all right. Yeah. All I can think about, you know, Phil's dark side of anime and stuff, and it's like I then watched Future Diary. And I think that's probably like the first, because I typically bounce off of like horror kind of weird stuff, because I like rom-com slice of life, you know, like non-Buri, I'd watch that all day. Eurocamp, all day. Never even a second guess. And watch Future Diary, I'm like, oh boy. Then I watch some Boogie Bop Pants and Phantom, I'm like, oh my. Then a little bit of Paranoia Agent, I'm like, what am I doing? Ergo Proxy, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself?
Oh, Jay, yes.
No, that
anime. Sorry, go ahead. Doreku.
No, I was just gonna say that one, definitely definitely the weirdest anime that I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I'm hesitant to even mention it. It was
What?
My Little Pony.
Sorry, you died there for a second. Oh yeah, I think we'll losing Steve again. Yep. That's frustrating.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Steve. It just keeps locking you out for like 5 seconds. Right. Can't hide it forever. Actually, Captain Laser Eyes, I believe. I read a thing that apparently like Camille is explicitly stated to be on the autism spectrum at some point in Zeta Gundam, which I missed. But
Really?
apparently that is the thing.
Wow.
Which surprises me for 1985, whenever it came out.
Yeah.
But apparently, like he is diagnosed definitely.
Not particularly tolerant times in the mid '80s,
Right.
so it's
Which
rather surprising.
And I mean, that is one of the themes of that series is that he is not tolerated. Yeah, no, he does not have a good time. He gets the snot kicked out of him at least once because of his like physically like face to face because of the way he behaves.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's creator's kind of like, ooh, I'm not comfortable with this. Like that's ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's kind of intentional. But yeah, definitely something that comes up a lot in it. Excuse me, in anime, and I think it's kind of fascinating that we see it a lot.
And that's why it's fascinating. It
Yeah.
keeps us engaged in
Right.
what's going on.
Exactly.